Hello and welcome to another episode of Tangled Rights. I am your co-host, Justin W. Wilson, along with Shane D. Cox. And today we have an esteemed guest with us. He comes to us from, he's got his own podcast. His name's Adam Clausen. What's your show about, man?
Show is called Gritability, the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds.
Okay. I was actually wondering that because when he said it was just gritability, and I'm thinking grit like determination.
Exactly.
But I've never heard gritability. I've never heard it used quite in that context.
Well, it's not a real word. It's a word that we coined.
Sure.
My wife made up. But I'm a big fan of Angela Duckworth, grit, indomitable spirit, indefatigable drive. I credit that for being largely the reason I'm here, the reason we have the life that we are currently living. So that's what our podcast is about. We love to highlight other stories of resilience.
And you have a pretty nice life from the way you were telling me. You like Vegas. You're happily married.
Love it out here. Yes. Very happily married.
You wear a suit well, which is good.
Thank you.
Today, obviously, I'm dressed like what I am, tattooed white trash. That's fine.
We both have a little facial hair going on.
I didn't shave this morning, and I meant to, but I didn't.
You're looking like, yeah.
Yeah, GQ over here compared to us scrubs.
Wow.
So your life has not always been as great as it is right now. Is that correct?
That's a fair statement.
Fair to say?
Yeah.
You've had some times. Well, I mean, we've all had down times, right? Everybody has times where they're not doing as good as they are today, maybe.
Some span a bit longer than others. And
perhaps a little deeper.
Yeah, a little bit deeper.
Makes you appreciate the good times, though, right?
For sure.
Hopefully.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Give me like the bumper sticker, and then let's dive into it.
So I spent over 20 years incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons on a 213-year sentence, mandatory minimum. I was never supposed to be released. Fortunately, Congress finally decided to change the law, some of the mandatory minimums that were enacted back in the 90s that led to these draconian sentences. And honestly, when I received the sentence, there was no hope. Like when my appeals became final, that was it. No one was talking about criminal justice reform. And, it was always hard on crime. Like no one wanted to appear as being soft. So over the course of 2 decades, I didn't just passively sit on the sidelines and watch and wait for something to happen. I was very active in petitioning the courts and working with a number of advocacy organizations, including Families Against Mandatory Minimums. My wife became a staunch advocate. She started a nonprofit called Strong Prison Wives and Families that served as an outside advocacy organization, even right up to the point of her and my mother being at the candlelight vigil outside of the White House in the final hours of the Obama administration. When they were giving out clemencies, everyone referred to it as the clemency lottery. Like you get clemency and you get clemency.
The Oprah Winfrey of clemency.
Exactly. That's pretty much, that's how we perceived it.
Right.
And they blast these lists out and nobody knew when they were coming. Nobody knew who was going to be on those lists. But
they were just sitting there crossing their fingers being like, please. Yeah.
That's what it was. And man, that was the most difficult time of my entire 20 plus years incarcerated.
So, end of Obama, that would be
2016.
So at that point, how long had you been in prison?
16 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when were you sentenced? I'm assuming you remember the date.
2001. To be honest, I don't remember what the actual date was. My sentencing wasn't significant. The day that I was convicted by the jury due to the mandatory minimums, I already knew.
You knew it was going to happen.
I knew I had hundreds of years that were coming to me. At that point, it didn't really matter. The sentencing component was pretty insignificant, right?
Because
it was just a formality.
Your lawyer probably prepped you very well, saying, "Hey, if this, then that," and so you knew if you got convicted, what was going to happen.
I was very active in my own defense, so played an active role all the way through it, to the point where every day when we would make the trek through the tunnel underground from the federal detention center, which ironically, I watched this building being built, 7th and Arch, used to drive by it every single day. Like my case, all of my crimes, the majority of them take place within like 10 10 square block radius around that facility and around the courthouse. So I drive by this place every day, not knowing what's being constructed here. And suddenly I'm here on the 5th floor looking out this window, trying to squeeze my face into this narrow window to look down at the street and get someone's attention. Because this is 2000, like communication wasn't the same as it is today. Sure. And it was a really challenging experience. But every day I'm going over to court and I'm carrying this laundry bag, a mesh net bag with all my legal docs, all these manila envelopes, discovery, who is supposed to testify that day. And I've gone through every piece of paper, trying to mount some sort of defense. Mind you, I'm admittedly guilty of everything that I'm charged with. The issue is that everyone involved in my case has criminal background, is all involved in illegal activity. So everybody's dirty. Nobody wants to talk about any of the other things. I'm just trying to bring up enough to cast doubt on, the veracity of any individual who's coming into court to testify against us. That was the basic strategy.
So was it a situation where you were either all going to swim or sink together?
There were 5 of us who were arrested. One immediately began cooperating, which through statements that he made to local authorities, saying that he had connections, he had information related to drug trafficking with links to organized crime. At that time, they were mounting a huge case against Italian organized crime in Philadelphia. This immediately caught people's attention, namely the FBI. But he said, I'll talk to the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, anybody who wants to listen. Local detectives got excited. They're like, hey, we got a live one down here. You better come talk to him. And that started the ball rolling. That's why they took us into federal court. And ultimately, it's why they charged us with the mandatory minimums as leverage to get the rest of us to cooperate, which they didn't expect us to go to trial. But that was the decision. I didn't feel like I had a choice in that, it was all or nothing. And I said, I'm not going to put someone else in this same position, where their life is on the line, because ultimately that's what they wanted to do.
Do you know what happened with respect to that guy? Did his statement get him any sort of benefit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He ended up in the witness protection program, actually, washed out of it, and is now, last I heard, incarcerated in California on a botched robbery, homicide for a string of jewelry stores out there. But he's under a new name. But when, resources ran out, he contacted people from his past.
Sure.
So that word has kind of traveled back. At this, I really don't care. I'm so separated from that. But it is kind of ironic that, he's the one who got the break and has chosen to continue to live that way, while myself and one of my other co-defendants who went to trial together are all doing pretty well at this point. It's just, a little ironic.
It is very ironic. I don't think that's a little ironic at all. And the only reason I even asked that question about what sort of benefit did that get him is because a lot of people sometimes are under the assumption that if they have information, and let's say it is verifiable, decent information about some other crime or whatever, that's going to give them a benefit. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I've had a defendant recently who was looking at just a small amount of time, relatively speaking, compared to 20 years. And on our first meeting, he's like, I can't go to prison. I will tell you everything. And I'm like, okay.
I'm ready to turn.
If that's what you want to do. And he started singing like a canary. And they didn't seem like they cared.
No.
I sent the information and didn't hear nothing back. I'm like, sorry, buddy. It's not going to work for you. So, because they have the right to say, okay, cool. Thanks. Appreciate you. Yeah. Granted, that can screw up the testimony later, right? If they need that person to testify or to do whatever, but at least it gets them where they need to start the investigation, as you just said, right?
Exactly.
Because the fingers then start getting pointed in the right directions. They start flipping over the right rocks and finding other stuff. Well, I don't need you anymore. You gave me exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
So that's a really unfortunate position to be in. You brought it up, so I don't want to. I want to be very clear. I don't want to dwell on the underlying reasons, but if you're comfortable talking about it,
yeah, I'm absolutely
okay. So let's.
Go ahead.
What happened? What were the crimes? You mentioned them a couple of times.
Yep. Crimes are a string of robberies, primarily Asian massage parlors that were known to traffic in prostitution, gambling, drugs, all of those things. These were like serious robberies, like kicking down doors. Most of them have security.
I think I know why. Lots of cash on hand.
Supposedly lots of cash on hand.
Well, that's the rumor anyway, right? Okay.
You got to know when it's there.
Sure.
Like these are well organized. It's all Asian organized crime.
So was it like Yakuza or whatever the Chinese mob or whatever?
Yeah, there's
Something.
different factions of
Okay.
Asian organized crime that control these, and it's not all connected together, but
And these were armed robberies, correct?
yes, armed robberies, firearms, and there were a couple accidental discharges, ironically, from the guys who cooperated.
Somebody just indeed while they were committing a robbery. What the heck?
Yeah.
What kind of weapons did you guys use? And did you do it at daytime or nighttime?
Nighttime, always at nighttime. Generally, handguns, firearms. But on the night that we were arrested, there were vests and M16s, not ARs.
M16A1, like the fully automatic versions?
Yeah,
Woo.
off of the base from we're in South Jersey, Fort Dix, which I'm sure that led to a whole separate investigation because that individual also eventually agreed to cooperate. And, back in those days, like we were talking about, this is the late 90s this is the turn of the millennia. It's early 2000. It was like the Wild West back then. So not only Philadelphia was like that, Camden right next door, where I had previously done time in the state system, which 18 to 21, that's pretty much where I grew up. And that's where I met two of my co-defendants in prison, right? And one of them was living in South Jersey, just off the base. And there was all sorts of stuff coming off that base that the public would be very disturbed. In addition to firearms, guys would go out, bury the ordnance explosives that were supposed to be detonated, and then go back and get it.
Right. And they're saying, we used it in training. It's gone.
Yep.
Did what we were supposed to do. We threw 20 grenades today, not 10.
Yep. So all that stuff was coming off the base. And this is pre 9/11. You could drive onto the base. Like there was no security like there is today. So it was a very different era and there weren't the same concerns. Although we had mass shootings back then, it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So, a lot has changed since then. And I look back and I'm just like, wow. Some of it's pretty shocking. But for the purposes of our case, it was a group of us that were, doing these robberies together. I was at a point in my life where after coming out of prison for burglary and robbery at 21 years old, where I didn't feel like there was any opportunity for me. I had college scholarships prior to that to, go away, play basketball and take a whole different, trajectory in life. And after ending up in prison, those doors were closed. Employers did not want to give me an opportunity. I have no employment history. I have no real education. I have a GED coming out of prison, a little bit of trade skill. I didn't really have anything, any reason, any value that I could bring. And nobody wanted to give me that chance. So I used that first bad day on the job with this contractor that did give me a chance. I'm like, you know what? F this. I'm out of here. I'm going over to the city where I know, people from my past are involved in the drug trade. and I know that they're willing to give me a shot. I have credibility with them. I have credibility with all the wrong people, right? And they were all too happy to say, yeah, let me help you get on your feet. Here you go. Like, give me the cash whenever you get it. And I was off and running. I did that for a couple years.
What was your the drug you were distributing?
Cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, all the club drugs back in that era. And, at the time we had that whole Delaware Avenue club scene and the restaurant scene downtown, and it was thriving. It was, that nightlife was growing. It evolved from just a Friday, Saturday night thing to there was something going on pretty much every night of the week. And I was there. And for all external, purposes, like everyone on the outside looking in, like it looked like I had a pretty great life, right? By appearances. But man, I was so lost. I was a kid and I didn't know, what I was doing. I had this hole, this void that I was trying to fill, and I didn't know how to fill it. And I didn't have anybody there to help me with that, right? The people who were guiding me were all pushing me in the wrong direction. They're like, just keep going, and for me, that's what it was. It was full steam ahead. And there was a big raid at one of the houses. And that kind of spooked me a little bit. I'm like, you know what? I'm not trying to go back to prison.
I was just going to say you didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, things have been really good. Like there were police on the take. There was a sense of security with what we were doing. Like we basically had license to do this. But that only extended so far. And it, when that raid came and that bust, and I was there shortly after the last, person had left, the door is still, busted open. And I go in and there were drugs left in the house still. There were drugs and a firearm that somehow.
They just missed them?
They missed them. Mm. And I grabbed them. I'm like, taking this, I'm getting out of here. Threw some other stuff literally in the river. And that was it.
How much, when you say that there was still some weight there, how much was left in the house? Do you remember?
A couple thousand pills, I think.
X pills?
Yeah.
What's the street value of that?
Ooh.
At the time, were they single, double, or triple stacks?
Probably doubles.
Okay, so you were probably getting what, 15, 20 a pop for them?
At least 20, yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 pills. That's a lot of street value. And
Yep. So it was a good parting gift. And
call it your severance package.
So the thing is, like, I was doing so much of it at the time too. Like we're walking around, it's candy. I literally have it in my pocket. So here's a funny story. This, hopefully anyone listening, like, note to self, don't ever do this. I'm so far out there that I get a call from my parole officer saying, listen, you need to come in. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. This is not normal. No, you need to come today. I was like, nah, I'm not going to make it today. I was like, I need to clean up, right? So I am partying, and I have the house that I have at the time it's a party house, right? There's dancers, and it's where everybody goes after the clubs and remains there. So I'm laid up, and I'm like, no, not leaving here, not today. Maybe we'll do this tomorrow. And I basically tell them I'm not coming. So I decide I'm going to go in the next day, and I get one of the girls to come with me. And I'm like, just in case I don't come out of here, I was like, here's the keys. The car is out front. Go down to the car, go, take it over to my partner's place, let him know what happened. And she starts crying. She's like, what do you mean not coming out? I was like, I'm just saying, in case they don't let me walk back out of here. She's like, why would that happen? I was like,
it's parole.
You sound so much more aware than a lot of our criminal defendants on that aspect. But.
Correct.
Except for the fact that as I'm going through and checking my pockets, I go in my inside pocket of my jacket because it's wintertime, and I pull out, I have this rock, of cocaine right off the brick that I've just been chipping pieces off of. I'm in the waiting room to go in to see Parole.
So you're talking like close to an ounce.
At least.
Jesus.
At least. And I'm like, oh shit, that shouldn't be here. That's how far out I am at this point, right? And I'm like, just put this jacket on. So here's this little girl with this huge jacket weighted down with my phone, my keys, the rock of cocaine, all of this. And I'm like, you're going to be okay. And when I walk in, it was kind of like an eerie presence. And this is a huge open room. So there's all sorts of agents. They have their little cubicles. And in the back, there's like the partition's a little bit higher. And if someone stands up, they can like just see over the top of it. And this is like a secretary pool or assistant pool in the back. And they used to come over to the city all the time. And whenever I saw them at this one particular place that they would frequent, I'd be like, those ladies right there, whatever their tab is, I got them. And I'd always take care of them. And whenever I came in there, they'd be like, hi. This time I walk in and they all duck down and I'm like, that's not a good sign. And as soon as I turned the corner to this hallway, because I had a senior officer who was outside of the pool, they were on me, jacked me up against the wall. You know, there's like 10 of them.
They look you up or?
Oh, they searched me. They cuffed me. They had like on the ground. It was a little extreme. And I'd always seen this door at the end of the hallway that looked like a closet door. Nothing significant, no deadbolt. We walk down to the end of the hall. They open it and we're in the parking garage. And the car's already there. Door's open. They're like, yeah, you're going to jail today. I'm like, all right. Okay. Throw me in the back of the car. And I was like, hey, by the way, can you tell the young woman who's out there in the waiting room that I'm not going to be coming back out? They're like, yeah, we'll let her know. And I was just like, oh, God. Meanwhile, I don't know what happened to her because I've never spoken to her since. My car got impounded, like towed, impounded from that spot. So she never drove it away. But everything over the course of 90 days in my life, like, went to shit. Just all of
belly
it.
up, all of it.
I realized how fragile my existence was because I was basically like living off the grid. You know, I'm month to month. Money that I have put up in a safe. I don't have any bank accounts. I don't have nothing legitimate established. And over the course of that 90 days, I watched my house get sold out from underneath me. My car, you know, impounded, repoed, phone shut off. I walk out 90 days later out the back of the jail.
What'd you do the 90 days for?
Parole violation.
You weren't staying in contact or something? Or
They gave me.
He didn't show that day.
They gave me a violation for peeing dirty.
I was gonna say you probably peed hot.
Previously, where I thought it was masked, I thought it was good, and I had a feeling, you know what I mean? Eventually, it was going to catch up. But it's like, you know, people talk about, well, they give you multiple times, and you know, you could be dirty 10 times, and they're going to keep giving you options. No, this was once. This was the only time that I was dirty. Immediate violation. Admittedly, I didn't have the best relationship with my PO. Admittedly, I'm never even in the state that I'm supposed to be in. I'm across state lines.
So that's its own violation.
Time, right? Like it's this whole false life. And I'm sure there were things that had gotten back to him. But anyways, so I wind up in there for this 90 days, Camden County, which is like Beirut, right? They give you a bedroll and they're like, you're on tier 2D. Good luck. And a slider opens and you go in and there's a bubble in the middle. There's no officers on the floor. And they're pointing, they're like, you're over there. Slides open. And it's like, good luck. Find a bed. Find a place to live. You can't be out by count time. They'll come around and you know, do a bed count once everyone's locked in. They'll do the count, but that's how it is. So
that sounds unpleasant.
Oh, it's pretty wild. It's pretty crazy. So fortunately, I had done time in the state. So I knew plenty of people in that system, in that realm. And, it's easy to slip back into that.
Quick question. Did they find the rock that was in her pocket?
No. I don't know what she did with it.
Probably took it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Either
Without
way,
a doubt.
a free, zip or whatever is
Without
great.
a doubt.
Yeah.
That was payment. Yeah.
Hey, sorry for your trouble, lady. That's wild. Okay,
Yeah.
so you get out for your 90 days, and then at what point, where are we at in proximity to the final thing that happened to you?
So here's what happens. I walk out the back door. Like, they just call me. They're like, Clausen, you're out of here. I'm like, whoa, let's go, man. Yeah, roll up. You're out. Grab my bedroll. All right, see you guys later. And they give me a bill, a printout for the cost of my incarceration for that 90 days, right?
Love that for you. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
here you go, bud.
Oh, no. And it's, by the way, we lost all of your belongings that you came in with. So those are all gone. So you're wearing flip-flops, socks, bus pants, and a t-shirt. And it's January.
I was going to
on
say,
the
New
East
Jersey is
Coast.
very cold sometimes of the year.
It's freezing, right? So I come out the back door with my bill, and I'm worried about getting picked up because I have a DWI over in Philly. And I'm like, let me just get out of here as quick as possible before somebody else tries to pick me up and, take me out of here. And I get down to the corner and get to the McDonald's, and, they're used to seeing guys come out. They're like, hey, you just got out. I was like, yeah, let me get a cigarette. Let me get, change for the phone. Because I got to get on a payphone. They still had payphones back then. And I call one of the guys who would end up being my co-defendant. Hey, man, come get me. Comes and picks me up. And literally over the course of the next 3 weeks, the first one was the following day. I commit a string of robberies, of 9 robberies total. There was actually more, to be honest.
So were they planned out before you kind of came into the picture, or did you?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, my one co-defendant, kind of how it started, he goes, man, there's this place that I kind of been looking at, and it wasn't like there was no serious planning there. And he and I went, which looking back now was just like, oh, God.
You are so lucky you did not get ventilated when you did that.
Because those guys have their weaponry as well. So
I'm assuming that they've got that
100%.
protected well enough.
Yes.
And if not ventilated, then beat to death or stabbed.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very fortunate. And I was in a very different frame of mind back then.
Were you sober when you did this?
Define sober.
I mean, at that moment where you... So, for example, I have a lot of people who, when I see them, they're Tom. And obviously, I don't think I have any clients right now named Tom. I'm just using that as a name, right? Seems normal, right? But when I read the police report, it's Tom who's been under the influence of methamphetamine for 4 days, right?
That's a whole different beast, yeah.
Okay, so those guys, when you talk to them, it's like, yeah, I wasn't even in my right mind. So that's the reason I asked that question. Perhaps you were,
I could say slightly inebriated,
But not to the point that you were a different version of yourself.
No.
All right.
No, that's, there are drugs like when you start talking about meth, extended use, sleep deprived, you're not the same person. You're not even on the same planet. Yeah. Not that situation. I can't say that.
Okay. And I'm not saying this like any of my questions. It's literally just for context. And because these are the things
Sure.
that I would ask, like, to understand the situation a little bit better. As a defense attorney,
Yep.
right, you can kind of see where my brain's going.
Sure.
we are a legal podcast. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you pull off the first one. Do you want to talk about how it went? Or do you want to just glaze over that? Because I'm really curious, like just broad brush. How did you guys not get hurt?
Very good question.
Luck?
Obviously, I would say there was a lot of luck there. I mean, it was strategic in locking the places down. I will say that, there was a component of that. As much as there wasn't planning, it wasn't necessarily haphazard.
Okay.
It was room by room, lock it down, make sure everyone's contained.
Okay.
So there was that component to it. You get everyone rounded up in a central location. And then from there, figuring out where the money is. And man, You have to realize, and I didn't. Again, I'm going to give you my mindset at the time. I'm still a child. I'm a young man who spent numerous years in prison already, hasn't fully matured. My thinking is anyone who's involved in this is involved in illegal activity. Therefore, they're part of this same realm that I operate in. They knew the rules of the game. Therefore, they're fair game as well, right? Like they're living outside the rules of society. That's my thinking. What I did not take into consideration.
Rationalizing it.
Yeah. Trying to justify in my mind what I wasn't taking into consideration, especially like with these, the massage parlors. You have women who have been trafficked that have been forced into this or feel like they have no other options. Obviously, I know a lot more about it now. I've looked more closely at it, and I feel terrible about all of the other people who were affected. And even those individuals, those poor guys who were there, how this affected them, because it's got to be traumatic. I mean, some of these people got tied up.
Are you saying like customers that were there? Or?
Yes.
Mm.
Even
and when you say tied up, you're talking physically tied up.
Physically tied up. That's got to be really traumatic, right?
And thinking that they might die in that moment or get shot. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Were you covered up? Was your face covered with like a ski mask or something like that?
I don't think so that first time. Like little things to hide appearance, glasses, hat.
Different time though. CCTV wasn't everywhere. Cell phones weren't everywhere.
It wasn't.
And they'd say he was a white guy.
Yeah.
And I was real scared. I was sorry, officer. I don't know what he looked like. I was focused on the 9mm that was in my face.
Well, here's the other thing. Nobody there is going to report it. Most of these were not reported.
Really?
Initially. Wow. It's not until the night of our arrest where, and I can fast forward because these are all basically the same. It's the night of our arrest where we end up in the shadow of City Hall on this row where back then a number of prominent officials were known to frequent that area.
Brilliant. Another reason for them not to mess with you.
Got a little too blazing at the end there.
Super Gotham City sounding right now.
It was crazy.
Philly in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Philadelphia,
exactly.
Bro.
So, we end up going into this place and someone slips out. One of the patrons slips out a back door and there's a restaurant or something, 24-hour restaurant, not that like right around the corner. So somehow they slip out the back, get down this alley and end up making a 911 call, which is the last thing anybody attached to this wants, right?
Sure. Everybody's getting hemmed up.
And here's the kicker, right? Because we're on the clock anyways. Like we're not trying to stay here any longer. But what happens is when that 911 call goes out, it alerts everyone in however many square block radius. And at the time, there is a Center City stalker who is stalking and murdering women. There have been like 3 murders. So they have surveillance vans, like looking like PSE&G, like energy vans and set up all around in this area. And these guys are just itching to go, right? It's SWAT, like they have strike teams. So when this 911 call comes in, they respond. Immediately. And it's like, what the? There's laser sights coming through the windows and it's like, holy shit. And in my mind, honestly, I did an assessment of how many bullets is it possible to try and literally shoot our way out to get a clear path and get away from here because I'm not going back to prison. This is my best thinking within this moment.
Wow.
Thank God. I said, not enough bullets. We're not going to do this.
Too many lasers, guys. We're going to just give up the guns.
Lasers are dangerous.
As we've heard in our last podcast. These ones, for the audience, what he's talking about is there's a laser sight that gets affixed to either the side or the bottom of a rifle. It's to enable someone who's conducting a close quarters battle or urban combat to basically get inside of a room and get on target without having to do a lot of down barrel aiming, right? It's to facilitate faster target acquisition.
Excellent explanation.
So this is our Marine here, Justin. He knows
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Anyhow, so you got a bunch of lasers coming through the windows. Not getting lased, though. Sorry, we're tying it into the last podcast. You decide not to shoot your way out. Great decision,
Yes.
by the way.
Thank God.
What happened next?
So we decide to go the unusual suspects route. Blend in, right? We got a house filled with, Johns who are there, with women who are working there, with house mothers. With
How many people outside of you guys, you think? 20, 30?
At least 20.
Okay, so enough to blend in. Good.
Yeah, good to blend in. Multiple floors, rooms, like these are row homes in the city, so it's a lot of up, down.
Like a townhouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, there's steel security gates on the front, so we have those closed, so they can't get in. So we have a little bit of time to kind of make sure we have the best chance to kind of blend in and get out of there. And so that's what we do. And drop the guns into the wall, which if this other guy wouldn't have decided right away, like they never would have found those. But he let them know where that stuff was. So anyways, they eventually breach and give notice like, hey, we are coming in. This is what it is. But this is like an hour later. It takes some time to get everything masked and because they don't know what they're walking into. And they get us all out of the house. We're out in the street now. Everything's closed down. Got us all on the wall. And all of the men, they separate, right? Because they know that it's men perpetrators, but they don't know if anybody got out of this place.
Sure, they could have all left, and you guys could legitimately have just been dudes that were there to do other bad things.
Get a massage.
Sure.
And at the time...
At night. In an underground massage parlor, Shane.
And at the
time... You never know when you need that Swedish deep tissue, okay? I'm assuming that was what was on the list. Like, the little hot stones and stuff. Sure. I've never had one, but I've read about them.
Yeah. I'm sure there was a whole legitimate list of
there has
services.
to be, right?
Yeah.
It has to have a front. Yeah. Okay.
So they end up taking us all out of there. They still don't know who's who. They split us all up. I'm in a car with two other guys who are legitimate Johns, got nothing to do with anything.
They recognize you?
They don't know me.
Oh, so good.
What were
That's
you
a
wearing?
Brilliant plan. That is a brilliant plan.
Were you wearing all black? Like, could you...
I had enough where I could blend in, say like jeans, shirt, a hat, had glasses, dumped that, you know what I mean? Took the shirt off, come out, jeans, no shoes, no shirt.
Yeah, it looks like you were getting massaged.
One of the guys, and end up in the back of this car with conceivably those of us who have kind of been cleared that are going to kind of get moved along in this direction. And I look and I see this guy in the back of a Bronco, one of the police Broncos, and he's in there by himself.
Oh.
And he's looking at me, and I'm like, oh, God. I got a bad feeling. And the detectives keep coming back, talking to him. And the next thing you know, they're coming over to the car, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me, man. So I don't know how things might have worked out, maybe a little bit differently.
But it's not just that.
Don't.
And I'm not going to try to say that what you went through was for the better.
Yeah.
But maybe it was, right? Like maybe if you would have walked away from that, you'd have walked into something else.
I would say without a doubt, I would not be here today. I would not be the person that I am today without, unfortunately, having to experience everything that came thereafter, the court process, getting 213 years, having to hit the proverbial fork in the road and make a decision. Is prison going to be my life, or am I going to hold on to hope and choose to invest in myself, find some sort of purpose, some meaning within this experience, which I did. I spent the first 10 years in federal prison, really working on personal development, figuring out who I was, what I was passionate about, which turned out to be fitness. Fortunate for me, prison's a place where you can get a lot of that, but I had access to resources that not everyone else did. I met my first real mentor in prison, which again is pretty ironic. That's what I was looking for previously, and I couldn't find it. I didn't have anyone who wanted to really guide me and put me on the right path until I end up in prison with a life sentence. And it's another lifer who says, listen, come on, get away from all that madness, because I go to prison and I'm still living the same way. I'm still getting high. I'm still running around crazy. I'm working on my appeals, but I'm not settled, right? And I'm definitely not mentally stable. But it was in the gym that I found the constructive outlet that I needed, that started giving me the foundation. And this guy, thank God, Kevin McTaggart.
You still friends with him today?
I am. He's been in 38 years, trying to help him get relief. He's done some amazing things in prison, including saving a staff member and...
Like during a fight or something?
A staff member was being stabbed.
Okay. Well, an attack. Sorry.
Yeah, guy with mental health issues that probably would have killed her if he hadn't intervened. And Bernie Kosar, quarterback, Cleveland hero, has said he'll open his doors and allow Kev to come live with them. He's like, listen, man, this guy's been in long enough, right? And it's very hard once you're in there and you've gotten a label put on you, or you receive a certain amount of time, to get anyone to take a second look. Our system is not set up for that.
They kind of just write you off.
They do. And our prisons, our correctional system is really designed to... Incarceration is about incapacitation. It's not designed to rehabilitate. So for people who say the system's broken, it's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was intended, right? It's not constructed to make people better when they go in. It's meant to put you on the sidelines, make you very, very uncomfortable. And it's more in the Quaker model, right? We're going to make you regret your decisions to the point where you never want to do this again. But that's flawed thinking, because it assumes that there will be opportunity for that person when they get out.
Sure.
And that's generally not the case. We send people right back to the same scenarios that led them to prison in the first place, and yet expect them to make better decisions.
What's the definition of insanity?
Exactly.
Right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the purposes they have is to deter other people from doing crimes too, and that doesn't seem to work at all.
No.
I don't think we have a single criminal defendant who's seen, a friend or something get convicted or sentenced to jail, and they're like, okay, now I'm going to stop. It just doesn't work that purpose.
Absolutely not. And obviously my stuff is minor. I'm out of all of us, I'm the only one, except for you now, who's actually been in jail. And as a kid, when I was young, had no direction, doing dumb stuff. Even myself, DUI or whatever, going to jail, spending a little bit of time there. It's I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make me want to change my life. So for those kinds of people who were, like you said, I was lost, you were lost. For people who are lost, you think they're going to learn from somebody else's mistakes? Wisdom has to be, there's a couple of ways you can obtain it, right? The good kind of wisdom is I see something that you do and I learn from you, right? Your mentor or whatever. The painful kind of wisdom is the one that typically helps people, and that's I'm going to get punched in the face. And even then, sometimes it's oh, it won't happen again. I'll move this time. No, you won't. He's going to get you again. Yeah, it's tough. Okay, so police officer comes back. You find out, hey, this guy's rolling on me. And I'm assuming it probably snowballed from there, right?
Yeah, pretty quickly escalated to going from detention and being held at Central Detectives, which was local, Philadelphia, to the FBI coming by, picking us up, saying, hey, we're taking your case. And they actually brought us to a federal facility in South Jersey, which was FCI Ferreton, because that building that was being constructed wasn't yet finished. So they brought us to basically a medium security facility, put us behind the fence. They put you in orange, which honestly, like at that point wasn't that bad. It was way better than being, fed bologna and cheese sandwiches in these tombs that were underground where they held us for like the first week. So I was like, I can breathe and I can go check the law books and, kind of see what's going on here. Because immediately they started threatening us. You're looking at hundreds of years. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. I know this game. And then I looked in the law books. I'm like, shit, they can really do this. I was like, you guys aren't going to believe this.
Were you able to talk to your co-defendants?
Yes. I'm trying to think. I was with one of them initially. And then the other one actually caught up with us later when we were moved into the facility downtown, was one of the first people in there, had that unfortunate distinction because that place was wired for sound, for video, for torture. I mean, they tortured us for the better part of a year. Psychological warfare. They'd come in, they bring the dogs in on us, and everyone else is cooperating. Like literally out of a unit of 120, we had a quarter of the unit that tried to get on our case, which we found out in a pretrial hearing where we were trying to get the identifications and everything attached to them. You'll love this. I don't get a chance to talk about the legal side of it because most people don't understand it.
Or care.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's very clear criteria on how identification's meant to be conducted, right? Either an in-person lineup or a photo array. An array, there are guidelines on what that array is supposed to look like.
It can't be unduly suggestive, lots of other factors.
So you would say that if a detective took a Polaroid picture of me with a number on it, it's not a federal number, but there's a little number on the bottom, and showed it to someone and said, do you recognize this person? That might be unduly suggestive.
Potentially, yes.
Yes. Our entire case was predicated upon that. They not only did that with individual witnesses, at best, they took myself and my co-defendants and put our pictures together so that there was variety.
Does this look like the group of dudes that robbed you? Oh, there were 5? Oh, there's 5 here. How neat. Right?
Yes. There were never any in-person lineups. There were never any other photos entered into this mix. And they went into the grand jury and used those individual photos to, another legal distinction here is when you're in the grand jury, you are permitted to give leading testimony. Mm-hmm. You can basically describe the entire scenario as you see it as a prosecutor, and then just have the witness say, yes, that's exactly how it was, or no. And their confirmation goes on the record. That's exactly how they identified us. And all of this was later upheld by the court as being somehow legal. Don't ask me how. It's in the law books. It's absolutely insane. But we had the opportunity through this pretrial suppression hearing to get all of the ID testimony thrown out, which
huge.
Would have, considering the type of case this was, would have been pivotal. So we go into court and things are going very favorably. But the prosecutor says, because the judge is trying to give them an out and say, well, if we were to question each one of these individuals, like, could we set up a hearing to do that? They're like, no, that'll take too long. Why don't we just do it in court? And the judge says, well, how many people are we talking about here? They're like, oh my God, there's so many. too many to list. The judge says, well, I want a list. I want you to give me that list.
There has to be a list anyway. They have to provide you with a list of the witnesses.
Federal court, they do not. They do not have to provide you a witness list in advance. Crazy, right? So they don't have to give you this. They have to give you all discovery materials for anyone who may testify, but they do not have to give you an actual list saying that these are the people who will testify. So we have an opportunity now because the judge is saying, I need to know exactly who is going to come in here. You're going to give me a witness list. And unless that person, everyone who's on that list will be able to testify. But if they're not on that list, I'm not going to let them in here. And so they're panicked. They're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, we've never had to do this before. So we get a 10-minute recess. We're like high-fiving. We're like, we got this, right? So they come back in and they start pouring through this list and we're writing names down because I can't get a record. Like, it's not like I can order the record and get it the next day. So we're writing them all down by hand. And we get to this block of names. I'm like, these sound familiar, but I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know who these people are. And I know our discovery pretty good at this point. And it's all guys on our housing unit, on the unit that we live on. And it's all of these people who have made statements that they want to bring in and say that we are somehow telling them about our crimes, which clearly we're not talking to anybody. But that started a whole chain of events. So that day when we get brought back, we sit down in those cells basically overnight while they removed all of those people from that unit, put them on different units. And yet it just highlighted, like, there are things that you know when you're like, there are people who are trying to testify against us. And you might sound like, it's conspiracy theory and people think that you're paranoid, but then it's confirmed. You're like, I'm not paranoid. Everybody really is out to get us. They are all looking to testify against us for their own benefit. That was the culture then. And everybody was telling on each other and just trying to get information and stealing people's discovery materials so that they could, use that information to go to the feds. It was nuts.
Don't talk to cops. Don't talk to cellies either.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Don't tell your cellie anything.
And don't talk on the jail phone. At the beginning of the call, it says, this is a call from insert facility here. Anything you say will be recorded.
They can't use that against me.
Yeah, they can. It turns out, I actually had a case as a prosecutor. It was a slightly, it was a small trafficking case. And one of the co-defendants had gone down beforehand, right? He already pled out and everything. And so this gal comes back. I guess I'm not supposed to say that. Sorry. This woman comes back. I got flamed for saying gal the other day on here. I didn't know that was a bad word.
That's a trigger word now?
I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, this woman was back. She'd been in a different place and comes back. And then she calls this guy because they brought him from prison for the trial because he was a witness, right? Well, she said, well, you're not gonna tell on me, are you? You're not gonna say anything. You've already taken the responsibility. There's no reason for both of us to go down. And so what do? This is impeachment evidence. I put my guy on the stand, asked him if he's talked to her. He says no. I use the jail administrator, get him on as an impeachment witness, play the call. Because I can lay the foundation for it and I can do all that other stuff. And it's all because she had to call him.
Even if it's sarcastic, which I guess there could be sarcasm in there.
You could say it, but then you got to put her on the stand. It's
Exactly.
my job to present my case.
Exactly.
And I did that.
So don't talk to anyone.
Don't do it.
Don't talk to family.
Listen, the technology is so good now.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
at an American Corrections Association conference or Correctional Leaders Association up in Maine, where they bring all the secretaries from all the prisons across the country. And they did a whole segment, a whole session on what they're able to do as far as cross-referencing, whether it's tablets, whether it's cell phones, illicit cell phones that they capture data from the towers, whether it's your regular calls, whether it's your mail. All of that info is now a web that's interconnected, and they can very, very easily track it all down. Like, you're not hiding anything.
So listener question right now from Emily Himmert. She wants to know how someone could break into a ranch and steal a bunch of things and get away with it when the owners have security footage of people on the property. So that's a really broad question, Emily. Oftentimes there can be a lot of different things that happen. For example, like when I was asking Adam if he wore any sort of face covering, right? So the footage could show, for example, the people, but if it doesn't show their actual identity, also, let's say the footage shows them walking across an open field, the stuff was stolen from somewhere else, but they don't go the same way back. All it shows is that they were on the property. Yeah, sure, that's not great evidence for them, but it isn't definitive that they actually committed a crime. So there could be just a million reasons that footage wouldn't work in that situation. And in fact, here you said the footage doesn't show them stealing, but they had the equipment moved the same day, and they could only charge them with trespassing. Well, the way that it works is the state has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt as to each element. Well, one of the elements of theft is the taking of another person's property. All they can prove based on this factual scenario, this hypothetical you gave us, is that they were actually there. So in those instances, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, sometimes the prosecution will take something rather than nothing. It's like, hey, I know you did this, but what I know and what I can prove are different, right?
Very true.
Did you ever see anything like that when you were in? Guys that were in and out because they got lucky?
Yeah. Yeah. There's plenty. And like you said, they're going to plea it down to something. You know, I mean, it's a win-loss, game is what it is.
Sure.
Right.
And the something over nothing is oftentimes, hey, I know I can't get you for this, but I know I can get you for that. Or we can run it. And then the person thinks, well, if I go to trial, I still run that risk. They can present that evidence, right? And then let's say I lose because the jury can see through the BS and I get out on appeal. How long did your first appeal take?
Years.
Right? So you sit in prison for 5 years and then you get out. As a prosecutor, I still won.
Yeah.
Right? And then it comes down to the situation of what I know I can prove versus what the truth is. So great question, Emily. Keep them coming.
To be continued.